Prithvi Shantirantarikshagam Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shanti Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. The song that we sang just now is a very beautiful rendering of the song, one of the first songs that Vivekananda, as a young man, when he met Ramakrishna for the first time, sang. And the title of today's reflection, Returning Home, was inspired by that song which we just sang. So what does it mean to return to our own abode, to return to our own home? What is a home? One way we could understand home, of course, the way we normally use it. Home is a place that we normally generally stay in, but especially a place which brings security, rest, comfort, and love. But this is not always limited only to the house in which we reside. The town or the city in which we stay can be a home. We do here, well, Boston is the home of Red Sox. So for instance, so this is how a town or a city can be a home. A country can be a home as well, which is why the name Homeland Security. So these are the different ways we use the term home, and I think there are different ways we can try to understand what home really means. The school we studied in is often seen becomes another home. In fact, it's called alma mater, the nourishing mother, where we find our mother, and that's where the home is. Even the places of worship we frequent can appear like our own home. Now, each of these places has its own pleasant associations, because if they're not pleasant, the places are not generally seen as a home. And being away from these homes, or finding ourselves cut off from these homes, can create a kind of homesickness. But home is not simply as a place outside. We know that home gets the word home gets used as a virtual place. Today, in the age of internet, we hear about the home page of a website. We also hear about a home directory on a computer. So the word home really gets used in quite a number of places. Again, these are the places, whether it's a home page or a home directory, it's a virtual place where we can return to find things that we are familiar with. But home can be also seen as a function of time. We don't have to limit home to a spatial thing. It can be in terms of time as well. So some of the pleasant and memorable times we have had in life, the times to which our mind returns again and again, can be our home. The past, our own past, can be our home if that is where we dwell often, to remain immersed in some of the pleasant memories of the past. But if we dwell too much in that home of the past, it means that the present has not been so pleasant. And if both the past and the present have not been too pleasant, we make the future as our home, where we hope that there will be a time sometime in the future where we will be completely at peace, with ourselves, with the world, and when we will have an uninterrupted joy. So the future can become our home as well if we keep on dreaming about some golden period to come in the future. So the word home, as we saw very briefly, can be understood in many different ways. We can also look at the idea of home from a different perspective. It's a threefold perspective. It's called the personal, social, and celestial. The Sanskrit words for these called Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Daivika. You will see that many of the prayers that we have and the chants that we have often end with Shanti, 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 peace, peace, and peace. And one of the questions would be, why 3 times? Why isn't once enough? Why not 5? Why not 7? Well, what's so big deal about 3 things? And the explanation oftentimes in the commentaries that is given, well, why say peace 3 times, is because suffering can occur or grief can come to us from at least 3 different sources. And these are the things: Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Daivika. So Adhyatmika is personal. So suffering caused by physical illness or mental stress, that's very personal. And so that's the first Shanti is to remove this suffering that is caused personally, either through one's own physical illness or mental stress and anxiety. The second piece, the second Shanti that is done, is for social, to ward off sufferings that can occur in a social context. That could mean caused by other people in this world. Maybe some troublesome people at your workplace, or some not a very helpful neighbor. In the olden days, maybe you could even include the dinosaurs and others. The trouble and suffering and grief that can come, potential dangers that can come from other things in this world. And that's the second Shanti. And the third Shanti is for Adhidaivika, celestial causes of suffering, which could include hurricanes and earthquakes and tsunamis. Really, we can't hold any human agency responsible for that. So we say, well, some supernatural forces have acted, or natural forces, natural or supernatural, but certainly not somebody, some other human beings. Although, whether climate change is a celestial thing or a social, done by us, and there is a lot of debate about that. There's some people who just deny that there is anything happening, and some might think it is, well, it's just nature functioning, and some others say, well, we human beings are causing it. So we have to decide in which category to put climate change of these 3. But we can use this threefold perspective even to understand the concept of home. So let's look at the personal home, Adhyatmika. And the personal home is our own body. This is one home given to us right from the moment we are born. And that's the home we are going to stay until we die. And this home, at least, we don't want to change too often. We want to live in this home for a long time. Although this home is not perfect, but it's the only home that we know of and that we remember. We don't remember our past homes. And so at the Adhyatmika level, the body is the home we live. And if we, of course, believe in rebirth, then in every birth we get a new home to live in. But the mind, it's not just the body. The mind is also a home. It's a personal home. It's Adhyatmika. It's a home in which we have been living, not just in this birth, but for a long time. So in some sense, the mind that we have is been a much more enduring home than the body. That the changes in the body we know the body keeps on changing, the mind keeps on changing as well, but the mind is more subtle. And that which is subtle lives for a longer time than that which is gross. Software is more subtle than hardware. And so hardware can crumble down faster than software. That's a very crude analogy, but you get the point, that things which are sukshma have a longer shelf life. And therefore the mind that we have has been with us for a long time. Which is why oftentimes we need to surely we need to take care of the body, nourish it well and do whatever is necessary. But we need to take even more care of the mind, because the mind is really going to be with us for a long. There is no way we can change the mind. There is one way to change the body, but no way to change the mind. And therefore the mind should acquire a greater priority. And that mind will go only with God realization. So when we become enlightened, then we no longer need this home of the mind. But until then, mind is what we are stuck with. So that's one aspect of looking at a home in an adhyatmika sense. When there is a social home, adhibhautika, and that is clearly the physical home, the house in which we stay. They say that an average American changes their home at least 4 times in the course of their life. And I think that's an average, so some people might do it more and some people might do it less. But we know the attachment we can have to a home if we have lived in it even for a few years. And then when it's time to move, to relocate to a different place in the same city or to a different city altogether, oftentimes you feel something to kind of leave that place, which has been your home for some time. And then very quickly, the new place becomes a home. I remember when I first came here, of course, everything was new, and whenever I would visit India for first 1 or 2 years at least, whenever I could go to India, it was like, oh, that's home finally. It used to feel like that. But it's amazing how things changed. Now when I travel, even when I go to India and then I come back, come back and inside the center and back in my room, I said, finally at home. So it's amazing how these things change. But in addition to our physical home, our workplace can become a home as well. If we enjoy our work, and if we enjoy the company of the people we work with, then the workplace can become a home as well. Sometimes some people enjoy their work and their workplace more than enjoy being at home. So sometimes the workplace can become more of a home than where one lives. And sometimes you might see that we can see this quite often, but especially we read about in the lives of some scientists, for instance, that they were so engrossed in certain experiments that they would spend days and nights in their laboratories, or some astronomers. And sometimes the family members would be annoyed. It's like, when are you returning home? And for them, although they will not say that my lab has become my home, but if that's become a place of such paramount interest that everything else becomes secondary, then in a sense, that place has become their home. And in addition to all these, the places we often meet to indulge in our interests, such as in sports or spirituality, exercise, a gym can become a home if we spend quite some time there regularly. For someone who enjoys hiking and taking long walks, a riverside or a forest can become a home. So there are many different ways this Adi Bhautika, a home in this world, the physical home, can be understood. And the third, the celestial home. And one example clearly, heaven, being with the Lord, is a home, being with the divine. So again, home can be understood through these three factors. The three Shantis, as I referred to you, and the Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, and Adhidaivika. Now, all of these homes, they have their limitations clearly, because none of these homes is permanent. There is always the risk of being separated from these homes. The personal home, the body, of course, we know. Death is nothing but getting out of this body. And so this home is left behind, and then we go someplace else. So the body as a home, we are separated from the body as our home on death. In the home, that's the physical homes that we have, there could be any number of reasons why these homes change. Either we relocate from one place to another, either due to a change in job or for whatever reasons. These homes can change as well, or through retirement. We speak about retirement homes. So these reasons could make changing these physical homes also necessary. And a celestial home, we read in stories and myths in religious texts about how we can get separated. There is, of course, the well-known story about how Adam and Eve had to leave their home in paradise because of their act of disobedience, so that where they could have, in theory, stayed forever, and for some reason or other, well, we know the reason in their case, they were separated from it. We have similar stories in Indian mythology as well. Some of these attendants of Vishnu in Vaikuntha, and the dereliction of duty, and then they are told, now you go and be born as human beings for doing these mistakes. So they lost their residence in these divine places and had to come down and create a new home on this plane. In another sense also, the way the rewards, these post-mortem rewards, are understood through the theory of karma, then those homes, whether it's heaven or hell, can also be seen as very impermanent, being the results of karma. In Sanskrit, they say, yat kritakam tad anityam. That means, if something is an effect of something else, then it cannot be permanent. If the cause is temporary, then the effect will also be temporary. So if we see having a heavenly home as a result of my good deeds, of my good actions, then the thinking goes that no matter how good I may be, no matter how many good things I may have done, they are still limited. And so a limited cause would seem unreasonable to expect that this limited cause will give an infinite result. And same thing with regard to terrible things as well. And people can do awful things. But yet, since our lifespan itself is limited and our energy levels are limited, so even though we can do really terrible harm, thank goodness that's limited also. And therefore, even the terrible things that people have done, being limited in nature, while they will go and suffer a lot in hell, that suffering is also has to end sometime, because the cause was limited, the result will be limited as well. And in that sense as well, all the celestial homes, I'm not sure whether people in hell think of their place as a home. Or if it is, it's like, oh, this is a home I would like to get out of as soon as possible. But in whichever way we see it, neither of these celestial homes can be seen as permanent, even from the perspective of karma. So that's the major drawback in all of these homes that we have seen up to this point, that they are not permanent. Now, one of the things that consciously or unconsciously that we seek is stability in our life. That yes, we want to be happy, and if it's possible to have that happiness which will never go away. Unfortunately, all of the happiness that we are familiar with in our lives, it's like the high tide and low tide in the ocean. It comes and goes. There are times when you are intensely happy. There are times when you are mildly happy. There are times when we are like, now, not happy at all. And there are times when we are like profoundly miserable. And it's a kind of it's a spectrum. We go back and forth, back and forth. Although generally people say sukha dukkha, as if happiness and sorrow are like fixed entities, but they are not. It's a graded curve. There's intense joy, moderate joy, mild joy, just joy, and then you can go on the negative side. And so it's going back and forth between these things. A lot of what we do in life, a lot of what we think, we do it with the idea that this will bring something more enduring in our life. That at some point we are going to get tired of all this constant zigzag line in our life and ask ourselves, is there some way I can feel completely secure, completely at peace, completely at rest? And here is a way to think about it. And it is this. So long as we are inside a home, and understanding the home in any number of these different ways, so long as we are inside it, theoretically at least, there is always the possibility that we may be pushed outside it. If I can be inside something, then I can be even outside that thing. So the only way to not be ever be without a home is to be one with the home, to be the home. Because anything that can be separated from me is not me. The only thing that cannot be separated from me is me. So if my me becomes the home, then that's my permanent home, because nobody can take me out of myself. And so that's the one way of thinking it. So long as a home is an entity, something outside of myself, whether it is spatial or in time, or it's virtual, or it's celestial, as long as it is something different from me, potentially there is the risk, there is the danger, there is the possibility that I can be without a home. The only way to remove that is to become the home myself. According to Vedanta, and with which by this time all of you are familiar, is that such a home is our own true self. Nobody can separate us from ourselves. And what is the nature of this true self? It is eternal, it's called Nitya. It is unchanging, avikriya. So this home, all other homes will need mending, will need renovation, will need fixing now and then. The body as a home needs constant fixing. The mind, hopefully, will not need too much fixing, but it does. All of these homes need, but the Atman, the spirit, the divine spark within me needs no fixing. It's ever shining, it's ever pure, it's stable, there's nothing can come and damage it. And it's infinite. It has no boundaries. Think about it. Usually, the bigger the home, the happier we are. Now, if we can be inside a home which has no boundaries, that would be perfect. And that's what the spirit is. So it's important to recognize that we are not in the Atman. We don't have an Atman. We are the Atman. Every one of us is the Atman. The Atman is our real home. That's our permanent home. That's where we are completely secure with no threats of any kind. And that is why when Vedanta texts describe the characteristics of an enlightened being, and we find this often said, that a person who is enlightened, a person who has realized God or has had self-knowledge, such a person is without any fear. We know if you're truly in a secure home, we don't have any fear. There is a statement in the Upanishad which says, Udaram antaram kurute athatasya bhayam bhavati, in Taittiriya Upanishad. Antaram kurute, if I separate myself even a little bit from anything else, there is potentially the seed of fear is present there. Now, fear, we often understand in a very gross way. Like something, some kind of a threat. But that's often in a very tangible way. But fear is a much broader term. It can mean very subtle ways of impinging upon my freedom, my spontaneity. So the gross kind of fear, of course, in the olden days it could be the wild animals, or today it could be, of course, terrorism and stuff like that. But that's not the only fear that was mentioned, that was referred to, that is implied here. The other fear, and we don't usually use the word fear, but let me give you an example. Let's say you're all alone in a big hall, you're just by yourself, there is nobody around. In that scenario, when you're just by yourself, you feel free. It's not like you don't have to like running around everywhere. You could be just sitting in one place, but you know that you're not being watched, you're not being judged. You can be completely be yourself. Now, this one other person enters into that room, and that person is no threat. That person maybe even your friend. But just the presence of one other person, something changes. The whole dynamic changes. There is a very subtle pressure on your spontaneity. You know that you are being observed. That just as you may be forming judgments about people around you, that one person is now forming judgment about you. So your freedom already is affected. Now, we don't call that fear, but the word bhaya in Sanskrit that is used takes into consideration these very subtle factors which affect our freedom and spontaneity. And so that is what is meant by saying that if I separate myself from the external world, even by a little, that becomes the cause. Athatasya bhayam bhavati, that becomes the cause of fear. So the only time we can be truly fearless is when we are not aware of anything other than ourselves. And the closest we come to that experience is every night when we are not even dreaming. A lot of our time in sleep is spent in dreaming. We don't always remember our dreams. usually if we do remember our dreams, it's usually the dream that we have had just before waking up. But the researchers say that we may have more than one dreams every night. And so usually you will find very seldom, have you had any experience like you said, oh, last night I had 3 dreams, first was this, second was this. It seldom happens that way. We usually speak about it in the singular. Oh, I dreamt this last night. And so what these people who have studied these things say that it's usually the dream just before waking up. And oftentimes, even that dream, it's a little bit, it's almost like, so if you have water which is standing still, there is no movement in that water, imagine. And then with very fine powder, or some colored powder, you kind of do some pattern on that, gently. And then if the water is not moving, that painting or picture that you might do, that might just remain as it is. But then let's say if there is a little breeze, or you just move the water a little bit, and the whole thing disappears. So fragile as that kind of painting may be, a dream is a little bit like that, because it is in a completely different paradigm. The space-time that we encounter in a dream is not in sync with the space-time of this waking world. And so when we wake up, if you just wake up and like, oh my God, I'm late, I've got to do this, you jump out of your bed, then the dream picture has already been disturbed. You won't remember it, usually, unless it's been a very powerful dream. Then some elements of that you might remember. But sometimes, if you haven't gotten up so violently, or with some, immediately some idea which will come and move that water, if you just wake up very gently, then it's a little bit easier to remember those dreams. Sometimes, again, if it's like it's very gentle, people have reported that you can even go back into the dream. That is, if you're, let's say, whatever dream you were having, and it has come to a very interesting point. It's almost like you're watching a movie, and there is some very interesting thing about to happen, and the power goes out. And it's like, oh, what happened? We don't know. So sometimes it can happen in a dream as well. You're at some interesting point, and you wake up. But if you have just kind of very gently woken up, you can gently kind of say, oh, let me see what happens. Have you ever had any of you done that? And you kind of very gently go back. You've never really totally forgotten that at that point you know it's a dream. You are kind of partially aware of the waking state, and you're also seeing it. Sometimes they call this experience as a lucid dream, or lucid dreaming. And it kind of becomes very esoteric, so which part of it I really don't like much. But the idea is that the only time we are just by ourselves is in that state of deep sleep, when we are not even dreaming. Every night, at least for a few minutes, we have this deep state. In fact, they say that whatever sanity is left in us is because of that deep sleep that we get. If people, and that's why, and one of the things they do when they want to, in times of war, they get prisoners of war, or you want to break a prisoner of war or get some information or intelligence out of something, they deprive them of sleep, because sleep deprivation, if taken beyond a certain limit, we are then no longer ourselves. And so even for our own sanity, it's good to have that little bit of that deep sleep. Because even if you are continuously dreaming, and if you have not much of that deep sleep, next morning, even if you have slept for 7-8 hours, we will not feel rested. And what really gives us that rest is not so much just lying in bed. It's that deep sleep. The only thing that can give us more rest than deep sleep is a really good meditation. But short of that, the best rest we can get is in deep sleep. Now, in that deep sleep state, it's always a state of great joy. Because in the morning, if you have slept well, you say, oh, I feel so rested, I feel so happy. But also, there is no fear, there is no stress, there is no anxiety, there is no worry of any kind in that deep sleep. And the characteristic of deep sleep is there is nobody there other than me. There is no world, there is no object, there is no nothing. Nothing is there. And so from our own experience we know that if and when, for however length of time, if we are in a state when we are just by ourselves, nobody else, then we are completely free from fear. Sometimes when we are alone at home, we might say, well, I'm just by myself, but I'm terrified. I'm alone. But actually, I'm not alone. I may be physically alone, but I'm still thinking about all the people who could come. So there is, in my mental horizon, the world is still present. But in deep sleep, that world is not present at all. So at present, clearly, even though Vedanta might say that the Atman is our true home, that knowing our true self, again, you see, that's how language can trick us. We often speak about our true self. It's not our true self. The statement is wrong. It's me. Because when I say our, I'm again looking at the self as my possession. It's not my possession, it's me. We can speak about my body, I can speak about my mind, I cannot speak about my Atman. But all said and done, at present, many of us, we don't feel we are the Atman. And therefore, we are not really at home. We are wandering in a foreign land. And that was what this song was about. That we are not at home. We must go back to our own abode, means I must go back to my real home, a home which nobody can drive me out of, a home which is completely stable, a home which is free of all threats, of all difficulties, of all challenges, a home that needs no mending. So everything perfect, everything ideal, everything worth striving for that we might have in life, that can come from this true home. So I'll now conclude with the song, the very song that we sang in the beginning. But this is a translation from the Gospel of Ramakrishna, as close a translation to the Bengali original, which Vivekananda sang. The Bengali, the first line in Bengali is Mon Cholo Nija Niketane. Mon is oh my mind. So when you say oh my mind, that's the mon. Chalo Nija Niketane. Niketana is a home. Take me to my own home. So let me read that entire translation of that Bengali song, and as we do it, let's reflect very briefly on some of the ideas that came up this morning. Let us go back once more, O mind, to our own home. Here, in this foreign land of earth, why should we wander aimlessly in strangers' guise? These living beings round about and the five elements are strangers to you, all of them. None is your own. Why do you thus forget yourself in love with strangers, O my mind? Why do you thus forget your own? Ascend the path of truth, O mind, unflaggingly climb with love as the lamp to light your way. As your provisions for the journey, bring with you the virtues carefully concealed. For, like two highwaymen, greed and delusion wait to rob you of your wealth, and keep beside you constantly as guards to shelter you from harm, calmness of mind, and self-control. Companionship with the holy will be for you a welcome rest house by the road. There, rest your weary limbs a while, asking your way, if ever you should be in doubt, of him who watches there. If anything along the path should frighten you, then loudly shout the name of the Lord, for he is the ruler of that road, and even death must bow to him. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Next Sunday, we will have Antar Yoga. As usual, we'll have readings from different texts, music, reflection, and also a birthday celebration of everyone born in the month of November. How many of you are November? Oh. So, please come. Whether or not you are born in November, there will be cake for you. And on Wednesday, we will continue with the study of Swamiji's lectures in Chicago Parliament. And on Tuesday and Saturday, the meditations will also continue as usual. So let's conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.